Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Eradicating lead in water is one of the most critical ways that we can improve the health outcomes of our children who, when even exposed to low levels of lead, can have permanent damage to their central and peripheral nervous systems, learning disabilities, shorter stature, impaired hearing, and impaired formation and function of blood cells. This can cause lower IQ, decreased ability to pay attention, underperformance in school. An estimated 3.6 million American homes with at least one child have significant lead hazards. 1 in 40 children, 1 in 40 have lead levels that are considered unsafe. Each lead exposed child costs an estimated $5,600 in medical and special education services. And that's just for the time that they're a child. We're not even talking about the lost productivity of these poor kids throughout their entire lives. Now, Democrats worked to pass the bipartisan infrastructure deal, which included more than about $40 billion to support safe drinking water, including about $20 billion for safe drinking water, $15 billion for dedicated funding to replace lead pipes. Think about that, $15 billion just to replace the pipes that are still full of lead in our country. $12 billion to ensure clean water for communities, $1.8 billion to protect regional waters, $135 million for additional water improvements. Now, Speaker Gingrich, you were in the House for 20 years, House leadership for 10 years, the Speaker of the House for 4 years. Why didn't you do anything to decrease the amount of lead children are exposed to in their water?
Look, I think that's a great question. And I think most of us didn't realize until Flint, Michigan, what a disaster so many of our infrastructure systems have been and how much they need to be replaced. And I think the information you just laid out was very powerful. And I agree with you. And I think one of the reasons I'm for measuring outcomes rather than inputs, and one of the reasons I think that we need to look, for example, at blocking corruption and returning that money to infrastructure, we clearly have public health infrastructure requirements that are real. I think you'll also find, if you go back, that we invested a lot in trying to improve things. And in fact, without our investments, the situation will be worse today. But I agree with your concern. And I think lead is one of those things that is so obvious and so clear that starting with the disaster in Flint, it's surprising to me, we have not been more effective in identifying every hot spot that needs to be fixed and having some practical, efficient way, and I want to emphasize, practical, efficient way of getting it done, not bureaucratic, not unionized work rules, not whatever triples the cost. But this is a public health crisis, and you're exactly right, and I thought your statement was very powerful.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.